Welcome back to Transformational Thinkers. Today, we are talking with Jed Ayres, the CEO of ControlUp, and digging into how he's turning IT headaches into seamless digital experiences. Think fewer travel tickets, more innovation, and a whole lot less stress. If you've ever wanted your tech to just work and make life easier for everyone, this episode is for you. Let's dive in. Hi there, Jed. Thank you so much for your time today.
Oh, well, thank you for having me on. It's an honor to be on your podcast.
Well, it's definitely an honor to be with you today. Jed, before leading global technology companies, you worked in hospitality and ran businesses where the customer experience was immediate and unforgiving. What lessons from that time still shape how you think about leadership today?
I'm really glad to be able to answer a question about hospitality as a CEO of a software company. It's almost a guarded secret at times that I did own a hotel and a restaurant, but it was a very interesting 4 years of my career. I actually put myself through college in hospitality and ended up after the dot-com meltdown kind of going back to this small town in Northern California where I grew up.
That's great.
And buying this beautiful old bed and breakfast where I was actually my first job as a dishwasher when I was 15 years old. And so it was like a childhood dream kind of full circle, but it was a very distressed asset at the time. And I'd never owned a business before. And so, when you're 28, you think you can do anything and you just dive right in. So I spent 4 very hard years learning how to run a hotel and a restaurant and resurrecting this property. What do you learn when you're doing something like that? I guess the first thing is that it's a lot of work, right? It was crazy hours, unforgiving hours, right? And you're dealing with the public.
Mm-hmm.
We started doing weddings, and it was a very when you're dealing with the general public face to face, like you said, it is unforgiving. You learn how to deal with people in very high stakes, stressful situations, right? And I think this is a special skill that requires a lot of empathy, right? And
definitely.
I think it also, for me, one of my core beliefs is sort of 2 things. One, the idea that you can humans can accomplish almost anything they visualize and want to do in life. And that was part of it. But the other part is this idea of like the best leaders have a servant orientation, like the servant heart, right? And so part of hospitality, that's what it is, right? You're like looking for these ways that you can serve people, surprise them, delight them, and recognize them. So there's a lot there that actually translates into running a software company.
Absolutely.
And running any business, really.
It is definitely a transferable skill. Jed, your career has spanned from endpoint management and virtualization to leading ControlUp into the DEX era. What was the strategic signal that you saw in the market that convinced you digital employee experience, not traditional IT ops, is the core mission companies must solve today?
Yeah, well, I think probably coming through COVID, where you had hundreds of millions of people kind of working at home, with their wobbly internet shared with their family and no IT support around, right?
Mm-hmm.
But also doing mission critical work for their company, right? And many of those people are doing frontline type work also, right? Where they can't afford to have their applications not performing flawlessly. And so that was probably the realization for me, right? Because I watched through like sort of the 2010, 2015, you had this revolution and enlightenment around customer experience, right? Where everybody sort of like that you started to see customer experience officers and, whole companies almost built around the idea of we've got to prioritize and elevate customer experience. Well, if you're going to deliver great customer experience, you have to make sure that your employees are also getting a flawless digital experience. So that was probably the signal for me that I realized like, wow, this actually makes a lot of sense, right? Like getting this real digital signal and being able to optimize that in a way that's super efficient and making sure that, what's the most frustrating thing for a worker today? It's when technology doesn't work, right? And it gets in the way of them doing their business. It's like, I don't know, I'm
It's
sure
awful
your listeners
if it
probably
doesn't work.
experienced it, right? Where it's just like you almost get this like anxiety, right? That like
Totally.
it's very traumatic in a way, right? So yeah, this is where the signal that I saw. And I also realized early on, I joined in August of 23. It was early on in the AI kind of cycle, but I realized right away that the amount of data
Yes.
we collect about 10,000 metrics every 3 seconds. So, and that is contextualized around a single employee and all of the pieces of technology that are coming together to deliver their applications and experience. And so that recognition, I even though I didn't see it as clearly as I see it today with the AI models and what we're doing with AI, I realized that the fuel for these AI models would be data, and that we were collecting an inordinate amount of data.
Well, and I'm sure you can see what those employees are doing as well.
Yes, I will say that's a little bit of a third rail in the world of the digital employee experience. There's a whole nother category around digital employee monitoring. It is a viable market, and these are some very, very big companies that have grown up around the monitoring piece of it. But we've drawn a pretty strong line that we're not in the business of monitoring. We're in the business of optimizing and automating.
Mm-hmm.
Certainly we collect the data. We can do certain things that are, especially in regulated industries where people, shouldn't be, if you're a trader and you work for a large bank, you shouldn't be in Thailand, logging into the systems and stuff like that. So there are certain things we do around context and certain behaviors that we can flag, but we're
Sure.
not in the monitoring business at ControlUp.
Sure. Well, I would definitely want my employer to be looking at when someone's logging in a different country with my credentials. I definitely want that kind of protection in this crazy world that we live in. And so, Jed, ControlUp's platform has evolved from deep technology roots into a unified DEX solution. How do you define the practical difference between managing technology performance and truly managing employee experience?
Yeah, so I think there's a lot of legacy tools out there. And if you look at the sort of 40 years of the way we've managed and approached managing, securing, and patching endpoints, it's been sort of, we just add tools, we add people, we have this sort of hamster wheel of troubleshooting and tickets. And so part of how we're defining and sort of changing this and disrupting this cycle, which has been built up over 40 years, is intersecting it and saying, listen, with the great amount of data that we're collecting, you actually need fewer tools. So you can kind of consolidate tools. You can create a lot of automation, and you can also use this data to enrich other major tools of record, namely your ticketing system or your endpoint management system, where they tend to have very static data, right? Like when you open up a trouble ticket, it's typically data that was inputted, a week ago or
Right.
a day ago, or even right. How nice would it be if that ticket had data that was 3 seconds ago, right? So that's your
Amazing.
troubleshoot it. So this is kind of the way we think about the difference between yesteryear and where we're headed. Is that it's really about taking tools out, taking complexity out, and creating a lot of automation that breaks this sort of chains of the IT world of the past, right? Fewer tools, and honestly, way less troubleshooting. In the future, we imagine a future with very limited amounts of troubleshooting and very limited numbers of trouble tickets. In fact, Gartner, I assume your audience knows Gartner. They've
For
made some
sure.
big predictions in this area. In fact, they've kind of made a startling prediction that says if you're in IT and you haven't put one of these platforms in by 2028, there's a good chance you'll lose your job. And why are they making that prediction? They're saying that people that have these technologies are going to be basically carrying about a 75 less percent of tickets than organizations that haven't embarked on this automation journey.
Interesting.
It's kind of exciting to have that, the biggest analyst in the world sort of making such a startling.
That's a startling prediction. There's no question about it, because that means the organization would change significantly, and the work that people would be doing would be very different in the future.
Exactly. Well, and hopefully when you think about IT and you think about the type of problems that people have, they're very similar, right? Like the pattern that you actually see is quite repeatable, right? Like if people have too many tabs open on in Chrome and it's slowing down the processor, like that's a known thing, right? So like you can see some of the things that cause problems. It's not like it's a very novel new thing. It tends to be the same repetitive problem that's being solved. And so this is low hanging fruit for AI, right? It's like
right.
Humans should not be spending their time solving the same problem over and over again, right? If you can
Absolutely.
use agentic AI to crush that. And so it's pretty soul crushing work too, right? Where you're just solving the same problem over and over again. And so I think that's where, from an AI perspective, it's low cost. It's like it doesn't have some of the moral and ethical challenges that some applications of AI might have. And I think, a very ripe area for AI to be applied and see radical ROI.
Radical return on investment. So, Jed, CEOs often see DEX as just an IT problem. How do you reframe digital employee experience as a strategic business outcome that impacts productivity, retention, and innovation at scale?
Yeah, so part of the problem there is you got to get to the C-suite, right? So you got to get out of the sort of like core IT administrators and get up into the C-suite, right? And help them understand the real value proposition that we just talked about, right? Which is reducing the number of tools and creating this radical amount of automation, right? And then for them to see what the implications are in terms of both the return on investment from an IT spend, but equally important, the drag on productivity that's created by all that friction, right? So like we see close to well over $4,000 a year per employee lost in productivity when we do our studies. And so it's like, yeah, like people put up with a lot actually. And so this is where we're able to see it like at a hospital. If you have a long login time and you're able to shorten that down, right? And people are they're going from room to room with a badge and logging in. If it takes several minutes for it to pull up their session and you can reduce that to 10 seconds, right? Like it can be very meaningful across a large hospital. And then of course there's a cost every time a trouble ticket does get open, that's probably $40 to $120. You have a lot of tools that we talked about that get stacked up that we take out. We usually take 2 to 3 tools out just in the very first deployment of our product, which in many cases, those tools are costing a company, $500,000 to $1 million a year.
Exactly. Are you able to speak to what kinds of tools? You don't have to use company names at all, but like what kinds of tools do you commonly see that you're able to rationalize?
Yeah, the most obvious one has been around remote control, because obviously this kind of goes back to what we talked about earlier. When you have all this like rich data,
sure,
and you're able to also run remediations and scripts and right from that remote console. So we have a very rich remoting solution, and a lot of the leading remote solutions are standalone technologies that are very expensive, right? So that's been on some of the RMM solutions out there and the legacy endpoint management solutions. We've been able to take out a lot of times. What you see also in these organizations is that those tools, while we might not do everything they do, we do enough, right? And they're like, wow, we get all these other benefits. And so, or they haven't deployed the tool fully. It's like come to them through an acquisition and it's sort of half deployed. So there's a lot of discovery we do in the very early stages of looking and working with a company to show them like, hey, these are the tools we think we can take out. But we have a compliance product that does security posture management, and it actually identifies devices that are out of compliance, both applications and hardware. And so that's a whole body of technology that that we're attacking, that you can take out, right? These are meaningful.
That's fascinating. That's really fascinating. If you can see non-compliant devices, That definitely is going to increase security without question.
I would say our product is like very good at security posture management. So seeing non-compliant devices, seeing out of version software, and then also be able to automate and send the new version to that device. So yeah, there's a pretty wide spectrum of things that we replace, and that's very rewarding, right? Because it's every one of the agents that you're taking off of a device is also helping with user experience, right? You're just taking weight off of the load. Most Windows images we run in today have 25 to 30 images or agents running on them. So if you can take a couple of those, every one of those agents also has a pane of glass somewhere that somebody has to add to their set of tools that they're using to try to manage these environments. So this is where I think the industry is going.
For sure.
Is to reduce. Every company we walk into has a tool consolidation. And I think we're in a position that is enviable just because of the amount of data we're collecting every 3 seconds. We actually just this week introduced a live monitoring and management. So going directly into the RMM category, but doing it in a way that's different, right? Because it's got this pulse that's coming in every 3 seconds with the real-time data.
Interesting. And so that was going to be my very next question on the telemetry every few seconds with real-time insights that you're collecting. In a world of data overload, how do you equip IT leaders and business executives to act on signals that matter and not just noise?
Yeah, so this has been a big problem from the day I walked in the door. It was interesting, right? It was like, give me executive dashboards, cut through all the noise. Like I have so much signal, so much noise in this. Where's the signal, right?
Right.
And that's across all these tools that people have, right? It's like too much information, but where is the problem?
What do I need to do?
And so what I would say to you is like, we spent a lot of times building dashboards and customizing them for their use cases and all that. But what's really exciting is that like we just bought an AI company this week and we're adding AI functionality into our product. And the AI models have gotten so good that just fascinating because you almost don't need the dashboards anymore. You log in and the AI is essentially telling the IT administrator like, hey, here's exactly where your biggest problems are, and here's exactly how you should fix them. And also here's how you might think about fixing them forever, right? So that if that ever exhibits itself again, it's going to get eliminated. And so
that's good.
But I guess the other part of it is also interesting because most of the work we've done over the last 11 years building this company has been focused very much on the IT, the guy who's dealing with all the trouble tickets and the IT administrator. Also, what's happening now that we have this AI and we're getting more confident with the AI is we're bringing it directly to the employee. And so the other exciting announcements we're making this week are actually around bringing two things directly onto the desktop for the end user. One is sort of an alert where it's like, hey, we see this is a problem that's happening on your device right now, and here's how you might fix it. So like very proactively.
I like that. I call that autonomous remediation.
Yes, exactly. And then we also have right alongside that, we have the ability for, if it hasn't noticed it and you're still struggling, you can write in like, hey, my Teams isn't working very well right now. And it will go source the problem and the remediation also for that. So as you can imagine, as these models get better across millions of devices that are feeding them every day, you're going to start to see a world that Gartner is predicting, right? Where you just we're eliminating the world of trouble tickets entirely. And by the way, the leader of trouble tickets, right, is ServiceNow, the ITSM leader, right?
Right.
Now, interestingly, they are in this DEX quadrant, right? They're below the line. They're not a leader, but they have ambition in this space. Which and if you listen to their CEO,
which is not surprising,
he will profess a world that is a world of no trouble tickets, which is interesting coming from the leader in the ticketing systems, right? Which is it's good that he sees that, right?
And so all of this points to the fact that our IT organizations are going to move into more strategic work because the firefighting that they've done in the past, that work is going to change. And,
Absolutely.
and so
Yes.
that's a huge cultural shift.
Agreed. I mean, I think it takes a certain mindset, but I guess it's also back to our earlier discussion of like this sort of repetitive, I call it like ditch digging, right? Who wants to solve the same problem? It's like Groundhog Day, right? It's like, oh, I solved that problem yesterday. I can solve it again tomorrow and the next day. Like, why don't we put IT to work on much more strategic business driving activities, right? To enable innovation versus the mundane, blocking and tackling of endpoint management, right? Like this is low hanging target for automation.
Mm-hmm. To shift gears slightly, Jed, how is the digital experience challenge different for workforces that are mobile or frontline versus a traditional knowledge worker? And what lessons have enterprises learned from that expansion?
So one thing I will say about frontline workers, they don't have the luxury of opening a trouble ticket. And so like a lot of our hospitals, it's interesting to go talk to the CIOs of a large hospital or a large retailer. You'll find that the only way they actually really ever see the degradation in employee experience is by walking around, like the old school shoe leather, walk around the hospital, talk to the nurses or what have you. And so that's one thing we really, think you benefit from a tool like this, right? Is that you can, what good looks like, and you can set alerts. Like we have synthetic testing, so we can essentially we know exactly what good looks like for any workflow or any piece of infrastructure that you want to like set up an alert for, right? So that is what I would say is probably the most obvious difference between a frontline worker and a knowledge worker. The knowledge worker has a little bit more luxury of like troubleshooting the problem in real time or opening a trouble ticket, working with IT, whereas the poor person that's serving customers right in their face, whether they're patients or somebody who's trying to get through a line in a grocery store or whatever, right? Like they just need that experience to work. And if it doesn't work, it's just actually a reflection on the brand typically, right? And I think it does affect on the frontline workers. Like you see the hospitals and retailers that deliver a great IT stack. They're the ones that are attracting the best doctors and the best employees, have the best retention. There's a very high premium put on organizations that are delivering a flawless digital experience, right? It's like it's amazing. Like I've heard the CIOs of large hospitals tell me that they lose really good doctors to other hospital systems almost entirely because the IT systems are more modern and more frictionless.
This doesn't surprise me one bit. I mean, and when you think about especially individuals that are in positions where they can't be in front of a computer all the time and they need to expedite what they're doing, it becomes a stopgap for them where it's almost impossible to move their work forward when they have a technical problem. So that doesn't surprise me at all in today's world. Jed, I'd like to shift slightly and talk a little bit more about the digital employee experience. What misconceptions about digital employee experience do you most often encounter, and how do you steer enterprises toward the right solution strategy?
Well, it's interesting you asked me this question because I actually hosted 2 boardroom meetings at the end of last year with CIOs. And the first question I asked them actually is to define DEX. Like, how do they define it? And do they have an initiative inside their company? And what I would tell you is a lot of there's a very wide definition for DEX, and a lot of the IT leaders, ironically, sort of like center on the HR components, right? Which, if you look at the maturity kind of path of getting to the HR part of it, it's usually sort of like phase 3, 4, and 5. And most of the people in this maturity journey are in phases 1 and 2 that are very much more about just laying down the platform and getting some of these fundamental IT operational efficiencies in place. And then you can start to wander into some of the benefits on the HR side, right? Around onboarding, offboarding, helping people with more efficient education and enablement around specific applications and so forth. But the table stakes and where most of the organizations need to start and where I think they need to think about it is actually in these core IT operational use cases, because that's where the ROI is. These are not inexpensive tools to buy for a large enterprise, right? And so
Right.
you need to do all that sort of hard work around tool rationalization and the ROI you're going to get from these automations, clearly showing that you're going to take 20% of the trouble tickets and eradicate them in the first day, right? Because you're going to where the repeats are and how you're going to write scripts to eliminate them. So this is, I guess, my advice is that you get this very wide and very the challenge is that DEX is sort of means a lot of things to a lot of people. And by the way, this is where I get quite excited, Sarah, that we're actually going to move DEX is going to move very quickly into autonomous endpoint management. And when you say autonomous endpoint management, like actually people sort of really, that's a lot easier to understand what that is and how to think about that in a way, right? And so
it's something that you can immediately grasp the
right.
importance of it and why it's going to work.
Exactly. The DEX is I love DEX and I love the acronym, and I love that there's been 2 magic quadrants and the things we talked about that Gartner is saying about it. But there's a little bit of sunshine, rainbows, and unicorns dust in the sort of fairy dust of DEX, right? That's just this far off concept that everybody dreams of, right? But you got to do this hard work initially that is really around IT operations and autonomous endpoint management.
It's really doing the preparation to clear the path so that autonomous will work.
Exactly.
You have to rationalize the noise in the system and all these applications that are running and taking resources, time, and space. So that makes perfect sense.
One thing that I do think that, Sarah, just back to we collect all this data and lots of tools collect data and some of them do it faster or slower or what have you. But the one thing that is important to keep in mind about DEX that I think is a center point is that you're collecting all of these metrics and all this data, but the ability to contextualize it down around an employee, right? And see it specifically around Sarah, and to see it in real time around Sarah, and then also to be able to get your sentiment very eloquently also, right? So that not only can I take all these digital signals and I can kind of give you red, amber, green, but you can also tell me if maybe some of my baselines aren't right and my score isn't right.
Mm-hmm.
This is the magic of what DEX is, by the way. And so, there is I subscribe to the work that Gartner and others have done to define this category. And employee sentiment is a big part of it, right? The ability for that employee to be not only measured and benchmarked, but to give direct input. So they have this directional, back to our frontline conversation, right? Like making it easy for them to say, hey, this isn't going right. And now obviously with AI to sort of also assist along the way there. But yeah, DEX I think is a keyhole into the world of autonomous. And it's a special set of ingredients and IP that allows you to kind of really have this accelerated path into autonomous. And so I do think that there's only a handful of companies in the world that have this DEX, the DEX ingredients.
And so to double click on that a little bit, the information, let's say you had information on me and all of the data that you've collected on what I'm doing in the system, what I'm using. But it also, from what I'm hearing, it can also say how I'm feeling. When you talk about sentiment, that goes straight.
We're working on some fascinating things there, Sarah, where we're actually looking at frustration metrics that are almost like hacking and seeing kind of the pattern of how you type, how you move the mouse, back to our discussion about anxiety. When you're frustrated and things aren't working correctly, we would notice that. It's almost like when you use your credit card, right? And you have a certain pattern that you've developed about how you spend money and where you spend it. And then when you do something that's off that pattern, like that could be flagged, right? And so we're working on some very interesting things right now that actually will be able to flag frustration.
That's remarkable. That's very interesting and compelling. Very interesting and compelling. Jed, let's shift a little bit into leadership and transformation. Owner-operators often develop a deep respect for the people doing the work because performance shows up instantly. How has that perspective influenced how you think about accountability, trust, and empowerment inside ControlUp?
Yeah, well, I guess I live my life by a pretty simple kind of paradigm, right? Which is first integrity. And if you have that, you can build trust. And if you have trust, you can like build partnerships, whether this is internal, external, with your customers, with your channel. If you have that partnership in technology, that's how you unleash like life-changing innovation, right? And so like this is a pretty simple wheel, if you will,
Yes.
virtuous cycle. But I think, yeah, when I think about transformations, that's kind of how I think about it. I think about hiring, really quality people that have, great intellect and great work ethic and great ability to collaborate in real time. And that's more important than ever. And also be able to do it across cultures and time zones in a way that's, you have to be able to make hard decisions and kind of run against a plan, often a plan that needs to be adjusted, right? Especially in this world where, it's moving so fast. You can't plan in like super long, durations.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, that's kind of how I think about it. And I obviously I like to hire people and that have those characteristics, have some depth and domain expertise, and align them with a plan. And the best work that I've ever done in my career, and the best work that I think I've watched others do, those are the ingredients, right? You have clear North Star of where you want to go.
Absolutely.
You have a lot of collaboration along the way. And yeah, you're dealing with integrity, trust, partnership, and innovation in the world of tech.
Jed, you've led companies through major pivots. What innovative leadership strategies have helped you champion an emerging concept like DEX internally and with customers, especially when you are challenging long-standing IT practices with customers?
I think that last part is actually the most energizing part, right? In terms of getting people's hearts and minds. People want to change the history book, right? Like they want to be, I think the famous quote from Steve Jobs is like, let's go make a dent in the universe. Or I think he also had another famous quote that was, do you want to sell sugar water for the rest of your life, or you want to come be the CEO of Apple, right? And so I think everybody in their own way wants to be involved in something bigger and something historic and something that makes the world a better place, right? We leave it better than we found it. And so with those principles in mind, right, if you can kind of channel that, hey, this company that was, founded in the dirt in Israel and with this idea can now change the world, right? Like in a very meaningful way. And yeah, we can even beat the biggest people, the biggest companies in the world. When I was at iGel, right, like we were competing against Dell and HP and Lenovo. You can't find much bigger companies, right? But we actually beat them and ended up, they were putting our software on their hardware at the end, right? And so, yeah,
that's impressive,
right? Like that's an energizing thing. And yeah, you have to arrive with some of the values that we talked about. It's not really so much, it's about values and a plan and a lot of empowerment is what I've found, right? And laying that vision out there that, hey, if you can visualize something and you can do the hard work, you can do amazing things, right? And I think humans are in need of reminding of that all the time, right? Like that they can do more than they think, whether it's a physical activity or transforming a company together. And I guess I'm also a big believer in face-to-face. I know it maybe sound a little antique, but like the best work that I've seen requires like that sort of organic shoulder to shoulder. The most amazing things I've done, typically you have great people that are spending a lot of time with each other and not necessarily through a Zoom screen. We just finished a kickoff in Dubai. It cost us several $1,000,000 to bring people from around the world into one room for a week. But guess what? We'll get the return on that, right?
You sure will. You sure will. You can't beat being in person.
Exactly. So I would just, as leaders that are listening in, right, like don't hesitate to make those investments, because at the end of the day, the best things happen when you put people together. They break bread and they get to know each other and they learn about their families and their cultures and their kids. And that goes back to the sort of trust part of that wheel that we talked about earlier.
For sure. I can't say enough about being in person. Clearly, the consulting world really changed with the pandemic and became much more remote, all the way up the food chain. But I tend to try really, really hard with clients to make sure maybe we do have a modus operandi that is remote, but milestone meetings are very important where you're actually meeting in person. It's critical.
Agreed.
Because you can't build a relationship in 2D. You just can't.
I agree. No matter how good the technology is and the digital employee experience, breaking bread with someone,
it's huge.
Yeah, it's where trust is really earned and built. And then, what you see is it shortens the distance on solving problems. And especially when you go back into your global, positions and you're working from home again, which half our company does every day, it just makes it so much faster and easier to sort of solve problems and move the company forward. So I guess that it was a little deviation from your question.
It's
but
very important topic, and I think we're not talking about it enough, and people are responding pretty negatively to many leaders that may be requiring employees to be present some in the office. It's generated tons of conversation. I know personally with clients that I've worked with, if I'm able to meet with them in person, my relationship with them is so much deeper. I know that they are going to be much more likely to call me and talk about a really pressing problem one-on-one if they've had the opportunity to get to know me in person.
Yeah, well, I would tell you it applies to our CX as we think about like retaining we have 1,700 customers, and you think about, all right, how do you retain these customers? And in a world that's very noisy and they have a lot of different priorities. And I can tell you that we just hired a new CX leader last year, and the number one thing that has made a difference for him in terms of the impact he's made on the business is he's on a plane every single week and he's going and seeing a customer. And of course, there's nothing more empowering than getting to sit in front of customers. I'm actually a little jealous of him at times because, his ability to sort of see the opportunities and the challenges are informed by the most important center point of any organization, right? Which is that voice of the customer.
Exactly.
Yeah, we take it to another level too with customer and partner councils, like our big constituents. We also invest a lot, and it's very expensive to do that also, right?
This is very important because if you're in touch with what your customers need and you're trying to meet those needs technically in your product, you're going to be investing in staying power.
Yeah, exactly.
It's critical. That work that you're doing is absolutely critical. And so, Jed, I would like to take a moment to think about winners and lessons. And what I mean by that is when you look back at enterprises that have successfully transformed their digital workplace versus those that haven't, what organizational patterns, whether it's culture, governance, or metrics, separate the winners from the rest? So people that have actually transformed their digital workplace.
So I think the most important thing that I would say right away is that the companies we see that have success, they actually have formalized this at the board level into an important initiative. And they have people in the organization that have digital employee experience in their title even, right? And so that they become the sort of stakeholders to rally a multidisciplinary team around them. By the way, I've been selling end user compute now for 30 years. And I would tell you the most intoxicating component of this is that I've been in these rooms where we've successfully landed this, to your point, like what great looks like. And you're sitting in a room, and I've had this happen multiple times, so I'm telling you it's not a fluke, where you'll have the end user compute team sitting in the room, including both the virtual, physical, and application leaders. You'll have the help desk leaders and some of their team. You'll have security. You'll have networking. You'll have some HR people, and they're all in that room. And I've had this happen more than once, where they're literally scheduled to come in and sit with us from 9 o'clock till 5 o'clock. Then we'll take them to dinner or whatever, right? And the entire day is full and ambitious. And what it nets out to is, how do we get more out of this platform? How do we get more out of this data? How can we move this data into? Oh, by the way, there's also sometimes API experts and data scientists in the room, right? They're all bearing down on the data set and the platform, and like, how can we get more out of this and take more pain out of the challenges in the employee experience, and how can we take cost and complexity out of our tool set? That is very energizing, I have to say, right? Because typically when you sell a piece of software, especially in the end user compute world, you're kind of like contained to the small little world, and so that is just completely exciting when that happens. And typically, again, that's the digital employee experience kind of stakeholder. He's driving this multidisciplinary team around the table.
And so they're totally embracing it. They get what they need to do. They're thinking about, how can we reduce complexity in the organization? How can we make this easier to adopt? They're thinking about how they can rationalize their organization as well, what tools they have.
Exactly. And it's just, when you see that, managed. And I guess I would also say the other thing they do is they invest. When they buy our software, they also invest in a technical resource that we provide them, that's there for the life of the, most of them sign for a year term. They sign on for our full platform, and they sign with this technical resource that becomes kind of highly, they understand their use cases and their environment and how to apply our moving set of innovation into that environment, right? And so that's been also from a sort of like success of transformation of ControlUp, who started as sort of a single viral one product into this platform. We've sold about 100 of them in the last year, where it's just the full platform of all the technology, all the IP that we have, right? We show up with it. We package one SKU with this really smart technical person that's going to stay with you for the life of those 3-year term. And I can tell you, this formula is just, that also is very exciting, right? Because you kind of like know that you have a long-term partner that's on both sides. And that's
an investment in customer success for sure, right there. Having a technical resource like that you could lean on to figure something out is worth.
Yeah, they almost become an extension of their team, right? To ensure that this is going to go well. And of course, we do all kinds of other things with executive sponsorships and things like that. But if you're going to build an enterprise platform and you're going to be successful, I think these are the ingredients I see here.
What are the biggest lessons that some of your enterprise clients have learned when implementing the digital workplace?
Well, I think it goes back to kind of the inverse of what we just talked about with great, right? Where they don't understand the totality of how this can impact, and they sort of think about it in a sliver of it, right? And then they don't have they don't have enough investment of resources. Sometimes those resources will move on, and then there's not enough people that have had exposure to the tool, right? So we actually, and I think this is a best practice for any company out there on either side of this. We have QBRs, and we actually have like bunch of health scores, right? So we can kind of we can see, we use our own telemetry into the some of the same ideas of telemetry to like actually score how well we think the product is being deployed. And you'd think, oh, well, maybe you just kind of keep that to yourself. But one of the things we've learned along the way is actually like we show that to the customer, right? We're like, hey,
I like it. Let's be upfront.
And you only had 15 people, log in last week, where, normally a customer this size, we should see 50 or whatever using the console. Or goal is to have 300 people using it, and you only have 4 automations running. We should have, lots more. So
that really, that's powerful, because that makes your quarterly business review all that much more valuable to the customer when you're leading with information about how they're actually using it. So and
benchmarking them against some of the other people that have deployed it successfully in their verticals also, and best practices, because it can be very interesting. That kind of gets their attention typically too, right?
It definitely gets my attention for sure. Lastly, Jed, what's a bold prediction you're willing to make about the future of work and employee experience in the next 5 years? And how should enterprise leaders prepare for it now?
Well, I think it goes back, and I'll kind of echo the prognosis that Gartner gave, but I think in the next several years, we're going to move into a world where if you are sort of troubleshooting the way that we do today, you're going to lose your job, right? This will be deemed reckless in a way, right? Like you'll be wasteful of human energy and precious dollars. And so I think that's probably my most important. The technology is moving so quickly that if you're not making this investment, you're living in an era that is going to be deemed sort of reckless almost, right? Like you have to get on with this technology because it is the future. So that would be my you can't wait around any longer, right? Like when you start to see just the AI that we've announced this week and how that is going to impact this sort of antiquated hamster wheel of troubleshooting and ticketing, it's just.
This is so exciting what you're doing. You are definitely going to have a very exciting time, and you're going to absolutely transform the way people are doing IT operations.
Yeah, it's that actually is the quote that I left our whole organization with. I said, hey, everyone knows about this quote of leave a dent in the universe from Steve Jobs. And then I have this quote from our chief product officer, Gotti Feldman, basically saying someday this quote will be just as famous, right? Essentially saying, hey, ControlUp, you're part of building the first autonomous IT operation platform that the world has ever seen, right? Like that should get everybody out of bed in the morning and get them excited about the journey that we're on here and the impact that we can make and how disruptive this is. And I think, the analysts, God bless them, they see this coming. I think the investment community is warming up to like exactly how disruptive this is. And this is going to be the inflection year, I would say, right? Where you see the implications of this come into stark focus for all the constituencies across this, whether it's the legacy players in unified endpoint management or RMM or some of these IT operational functions that are kind of standalone silos, or the channel partners that are trying to help big customers adopt this technology, the customers themselves. I think a lot of people's minds are going to be sharpened when they see some of how it is some of the fairy dust that we talked about at the beginning, right? Like it's just like it's kind of hard to believe when you see the model source the remediation in seconds and apply it, right? Like you're just like, wow, that is mind bending in a way, right? Where you're just like, wow, that sequence in the old paradigm might have taken days, right? For a ticket to open, someone to get it into their queue, for them to get the data, open up many tools, try to troubleshoot it, maybe take remote control, find a time in the person's calendar, take over their device. Like the amount of complexity in that process is not to be underestimated, right? And so when you watch it solve a problem in 6 seconds,
in real time,
completely from the desktop, right?
I mean, that is just
this is phenomenal, like fascinating. And and obviously on the back end, we also see that same application being applied to the IT administrator, right? Suggesting things that that will help them as well. I am very excited for 2026, and hopefully you hear it in my voice. I hope that any of your listeners, go check it out and see what we're up to. But it's fascinating.
I am so excited to be able to share your story. Jed, I know that this year is going to be tremendous for ControlUp, and I'm excited to see the step change in the industry. Thank you so much for your time today.
Well, Sarah, it's been a very fun conversation. We covered a lot of ground, from hotels and restaurants to autonomous AI IT ops. So thanks so much for having me.
Absolutely. Thanks so much. 3 key takeaways for today's leaders. Human-centered tech drives results. Jed's early experience in hospitality proved the importance of a servant leader mindset, a lesson now at the core of digital employee experience, or DEX. Serving and empowering people translates directly into better technology outcomes. Tool consolidation is the future. The next wave for IT isn't adding more tools. It's simplifying and automating with real-time data. Leading organizations are shedding legacy software, reducing tickets, and focusing IT on strategic business drivers, not firefighting. Employee experience is everyone's business. The best performing enterprises elevate DEX to a board-level priority, create cross-functional teams, including HR and IT, and track both digital performance and employee sentiment. This integrated approach drives productivity, retention, and innovation. Change is coming fast, with AI set to revolutionize IT and employee experience by 2028. Forward-thinking organizations are getting ahead now, and Jed's insights are a timely blueprint. To my listeners that have left reviews and ratings, I can't tell you how much I appreciate the wonderful reviews and ratings you've left. For those that haven't left one yet, please leave a rating and review on the platform of your choice. If you have a question or would like to see a topic covered, leave a voice message on SpeakPipe. The link is in the show notes. As always, thank you for listening.